Like the story, the character of Trip can be one of those blink and you'll miss it things about Sonic Superstars. If you're a more casual player who just enjoys blasting through these games at speed, you'll probably hardly even notice she's there. Until you try and finish her story, that is, then by God you'll know she's there. My point is, her introduction is a subtle one, and if you're not paying close attention to each and every scene, one that can be viewed as quite disjointed and lackluster. This probably isn't helped by the fact that a lot of her introduction is actually covered outside of the game, in extended media like the prologue comic and the Trio of Trouble short. But lucky for you, you have me to sort through all this external media nonsense and paint you the full picture of Trip. Because honestly, there's a lot more to this spiny gal than you might think. So let's get into it and dive into the character and backstory of Sonic's newest friend. Trip is a Sungazer lizard who lives on an archipelago called the North Star Islands. She's what's that? Trip is a funny name, why is she called that? Trip is a shy and timid creature who seems to have been living alone on these islands as the last of her kind. At first glance, she comes across as quite awkward and incapable. You would almost think that she was a total weakling, but in reality, a lack of strength isn't Trip's problem. Her real problem is that she doesn't believe in herself. She has no confidence and seems to lack any experience at all when it comes to fighting. But see, Trip is actually immensely powerful. She just doesn't know it yet. It's this lack of confidence and any belief that she has what it takes to protect her home that leads her to being forced into helping Eggman and Fang, serving as their guide across the North Star Isles. Make no mistake, this is nothing like Eggman tricking Knuckles. Trip is pretty much forced to help. She did attempt to resist their invasion at first, but she was trembling too much with fear and fell. These dangerous intruders were too much for her, so she reluctantly went along with whatever they had planned. She feared for her life and saw no alternative. Despite being teased as one of the Trio of Trouble, Trip is a soft and gentle creature, and it's obvious to anyone watching that her heart isn't in this whole villain thing. She has an appreciation for the natural beauty all around her, and anytime she's forced into a situation where Eggman or Fang hurt someone, she immediately displays signs of guilt or pity, or flat out botches the plan because she doesn't actually want to do it. Trip doesn't enjoy mistreating anyone. That's not who she is. But she now finds herself in the company of people who do, and showing just how innocent and naive she really is, she thinks they might actually care about her. That if she just does what they say, they might actually consider her part of the team. But obviously, Eggman and Fang couldn't care less about Trip. Eggman is too distracted with his evil scheme, and Fang openly detests her. As far as he's concerned, she's a clumsy screw-up who's only good for getting in his way. Trip being lumped in with Fang for this game was no accident though. They were deliberately paired up to contrast each other in the strongest way possible. Fang is abrasive, cocky, and bad to the bone. Everything Trip is not. The more I think about the events of Sonic Superstars and the inevitable character arc for Trip, the more I think had Eggman not been so distractive, leaving Fang to deal with her, he probably would have kept her on side longer. Eggman is manipulative and clever. I'm sure he could have easily cooked up a story to keep her quiet. But Fang, on the other hand, has absolutely no patience for her, and after one screw-up too many, he decides to abandon her. This is the point where everything finally gets too much for Trip and she breaks down in tears. But as fortune would have it, fate has more in store for Trip than the bad hand she's been dealt. The moment she meets Amy is flat out adorable, because you can clearly see how this simple act of kindness means so much to Trip. As a shy and lonely hermit, she's not used to dealing with other people, and her only experience with outsiders so far has been the polar opposite of this. The kindness Amy shows her teaches Trip that there actually are nice people out there, which puts into sharp focus for her just how bad and wrong Eggman and Fang are. This friendship is definitely one I'll be keeping an eye on, especially if it makes its way into the modern timeline. And if that Tales Tube tease is to be believed, then that's not out of the question. Like with the best classic Sonic game, the meat of the story and lore in Superstars is nicely depicted in an elaborate mural. You know, that same mural that tipped Eggman off about a sleeping power somewhere on the island? Well, true to his treasure hunter name, Knuckles also finds this mural. It depicts a giant snake that seems to encompass a prophecy. And while the snake doesn't appear to be devouring its own tail, I think the meaning here seems to borrow from Ouroboros, and represents the idea of an infinite cycle of destruction and rebirth, indicating that the prophecy contained within has probably come to pass many times. This snake should look familiar to those paying attention, though whether it was trying to stop Eggman fulfilling the prophecy or is simply just aggressive is never explained. The mural also shows Gigantamax versions of some animals, explaining why Eggman has been going around capturing them. And perhaps most importantly, we can see 7 figures wearing the exact same type of armor as Trip, each utilizing the different emerald powers that the Chaos Emeralds grant on the North Star Islands. They're all surrounding a strange black egg at the very center, and seem to be using the emerald powers against it. So we now know why Eggman is doing what he's doing. He wants to awaken the Crayola dragon that sleeps in this egg, no doubt intending to use its power to take over the world. Because that's worked out so well for him before, right? Or has that happened yet? But more importantly, we now have some very interesting background information on Trip. Like Knuckles, it seems she serves in a line of guardians, in her case though for the North Star Islands. This has actually been confirmed by Ian Flynn in his podcast, and given how cagey he was about how much he could say, it seems like Sonic Team may have more planned for Trip in the future, probably depending on how well Superstars sells. Trip's job as Guardian doesn't only involve protecting the archipelago from outside threats, but also an eternal cycle taking place within. Her ancestors have faced this cycle multiple times, but by all indications, Trip is now left to face it alone. That is, until she makes a whole bunch of new friends. When she finally reunites with Fang at the end of Golden Capital, she pleads with him to stop what he's doing. But as you might expect, Fang has no intention of stopping, instead kicking her and knocking her down. But this is well and truly the last straw for Trip. She's tired of being pushed around and has seen firsthand that this is not how you treat people. Yelling out at Fang in defiance, she taps into the power of the Chaos Emeralds lying on the ground and discovers her super form, a golden dragon. Falling back, Fang tries to use his incomplete mech to take her out, but Trip f***s his shit right up and destroys it instantly. If only it were that straightforward later. Trip has discovered kindness and friendship through Amy, who then introduces her to the rest of the gang. She's nervous at first, but quickly senses a big difference in these new people. They seem nice, and she begins to let her guard down. On a side note, Amy is really on point in this game, and it's great to see her back doing what she does best. Who would have thought consistent characterization would work, right? Up until now, Trip thought that she was all alone. She had no confidence in herself, and no choice but to follow Eggman and Fang. But now, thanks to the help of Amy and her friends, that's all changed. After Sonic and the gang go on to save the day in the main story, Trip is then faced with her own challenge, when Fang, along with one of Eggman's egg robos, decides to carry on with Eggman's plan themselves. But Trip now knows how to stand up for herself, and she's no longer afraid. She's now ready to protect her home. While her armor had traditionally served her ancestors as protection during battle, for a long time now, Trip has been using it as a mask. A way of hiding herself from the world and a responsibility that she wasn't ready for. But in her own story, she immediately removes her helmet, signifying her growth into the Guardian that she was always destined to become. Considering how clumsy and awkward she came across at first, Trip is actually insanely strong. She has the purple wisp power built in thanks to her Sungazer spikes. And she can double jump and turn into a golden f***ing dragon. A dragon that flat out breaks the game, by the way. All flying and shit, and also has some of the funniest animations you'll ever see. Trip finally gets to settle the score with Fang, and at long last, the true evil of the North Star Isles shows itself.
In his wee little boots.
While it is Sonic that gets all the glory of fighting the Red Eyes Black Dragon, he wouldn't actually have been able to permanently beat it without Trip's help. As Guardian, only she can seal it back inside its egg, fulfilling the mural's prophecy for yet another cycle. When Trip was introduced first in the marketing around Superstars, I honestly thought they were going for a classic version of Whisper from IDW. Not that there's anything wrong with that, Whisper is a great character, but I just thought it would be weird for the series to have two different characters that are so similar. She was shy and quiet, and they didn't really give much else away on her other than that she was working with Eggman and Fang. But obviously, I ended up being completely wrong. Trip is very much her own character, one with deep lore and a backstory that I was never expecting. Trip's story is one of light and dark. While Sonic was the one who actually fought the Dark Dragon, only Trip had the power to extinguish its darkness. Like is the case with so many games in the Sonic series, Sonic is the main character, the main attraction. But it's Trip, a character introduced specifically for this game, whose lore and backstory fuels everything around us. She is the uncredited star of the show. She's the light that shines through the darkness, and confirmation that most times, the quiet and humble people we often see but don't pay much attention to are probably the best of us. It's a shame she wasn't more involved in actively beating the last boss, but she was still crucial in sealing him away. And she got her very own story, so she definitely had her moment to shine. If I'm honest, after learning everything we know about Trip so far, it was probably inevitable that she would end up being a character that I really liked. Knuckles has always, not then, been a character that I've absolutely adored. Not just because of his personality, but also because of his backstory, as well as the lore that surrounds his home. Like Knuckles, Trip has her own legacy, a rich history where her kind served as guardian of some great power. She even seems to be the last of her kind. Everything seems to be linked in some way, with even the Master Emerald knowing something was going down on the North Star Islands. It's been so long since we've had a reason to be excited and intrigued about the characters in these games, and it's such a breath of fresh air to be getting that feeling again so consistently in this series. I'd love to see Trip get to go on an adventure with Amy after this, or maybe even Knuckles. I think her dynamic with both would be highly entertaining, and based on everything we've learned, she would logically have good cause to work with either of them. Basically, in summary, Trip good. Trip very good. But now I'd love to hear what you guys think. Did you enjoy Trip's introduction? Do you think she'll fit in well with the rest of the cast going forward? Who would you like to see her go on an adventure with next? Or maybe you think she's just Girl Knuckles with opposite character traits. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to drop a like. This helps me out a lot. And if you'd like to see more from me, subscribe to the channel and make sure to hit that bell. You can also join the channel Discord, follow me on Twitter, and you can support my work on Patreon by buying me a coffee or with a super thanks on YouTube. As I've said before, this is a massive help to me and a huge thank you to those of you who already have. You guys are the real Golden Dragons. You'll find all those links in the description, so be sure to check them out if you can. But for now, a big thank you for watching. And as always guys, take care.